It's a fact. When you're bullied in the workplace, your brain is taking a beating. Sustained harm of living fight or flight is like getting daily shots of cortisol, leading to both mental and physical illnesses. Jen Fraser says that's not conjecture, it's backed up by science and needs to be considered as we seek legal accountability.
The fact that our brain literally has to be rewired. How long have you been working in this field of helping people to know that they're not crazy? Because that's what we do. We think we are crazy.
I got pulled into a bullying in the workplace situation, a crisis, 12 years ago. And for 12 years, I have been putting together the brain science, the medicine, the psychology, the psychiatry, the neurobiology. I've been looking at what the researchers know and bringing it all into one place because, as you know, we're not informed in the workplace. We do not have laws that acknowledge all of this 20, 30 years of brain science. And we're actually going into a high risk arena that's very detrimental to our brains and can leave lasting neurological scars. And our society has not caught up to speed with very advanced science. And so, yeah, it's been 13 years that I have been nonstop working on this.
What do you tell people, patients who are questioning whether or not, that they are crazy? How do you convince them or even share with them based on your research, based on the knowledge, based on, all that you have done over the last 12, 13 years that there is something that has been chemically changed in your body, in your brain that we need to address? Because a lot of people don't even want to go to therapy, much less go, well, how do I retrain and rewire my brain?
Well, it's a really important question. And when I was working on my book, The Bullied Brain, I really tried to strike a balance between, okay, this is what can be seen on a brain scan when you've been exposed to repeat bullying and harassing and abuse behaviors in the workplace. If you have been targeted, even if you're just a bystander of the abuse of other people, and if you're the perpetrator, it is very likely that if we put you into an fMRI or MRI, we would see physical damage to your brain architecture, which of course affects your functioning, which is what makes you feel like you're crazy. You're not crazy. Your brain has been essentially traumatized and physically altered by the abuse that you're exposed to. Now, the key thing is with every chapter in the book, I make a really I think it's a very important point of letting people know the brain is innately wired to repair and recover. I do
Mm.
not want to send out a message of, trauma and shock and worry. That's not true. The brain is so able to rehabilitate after this kind of harm. It's just that we aren't taught in our society, number one, that we have an invisible brain injury, not invisible on a brain scan. We can't see it, so we tend to ignore it. And our society doesn't tell us that we're injured. It tells us we're crazy. And so, I mean, and of course, it's so critically important to get professional counseling, psychotherapy, psychiatry. These kinds of professional interventions are critical. But as we all know, there's 400 people on the wait list now for any person that you need to see to get the help. Well,
Right.
you've got to go to the brain gym. You need to do your brain fitness. There's evidence-based practices that you can do, anyone can do, inexpensive, practical, and I lay it all out in the book. We don't have to jump into it now, but there's so many things you can do to get your brain health back. And I think that that's the most important takeaway that I want people to have from my work.
Yeah. What's the first thing that people can do? Because when you say, hey, you can rewire your brain, most people will ask, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? What do I need to do, intentionally, physically do? What does that look like?
Well, number one, if you are in a toxic workplace, you need to be very clear that that is your situation and that your environment is toxic. It's unhealthy and it's very dangerous for your brain and for your body. Essentially, what happens is, let's say every day you go into that toxic workplace, you are activating adrenaline and cortisol, which is your your sympathetic stress response. And it happens unconsciously. It's something that happens when your brain thinks that you're under threat. And the brain interprets everything really as a predator. So it thinks that you are under attack. When someone is humiliating you, yelling in your face, berating you, threatening you, ignoring you is a really bad one. Not giving you feedback, mocking you in a meeting, doing social relational things like not inviting you to important events that you should be at, smear campaigns, gossiping. We could go on and on. We all know the bullying behaviors that can happen. If you are on the receiving end of those, your brain feels profoundly threatened because the brain knows that connection and community are critical for your survival. So it really is attacking your sense of survival from a brain science perspective. So, number one, you either have to get out of that toxic workplace. If you are unable to get out of that toxic workplace, you need to start documenting. Like, I would get all of this negative energy, harmful energy, hurtful behaviors on paper so that I can be very clear every single day. The neuroscientists call it name it to tame it. And so what you want to do is say to your sympathetic nervous system, look, this is a bad environment. Life is tough. We get in bad environments. We can't always escape them. That doesn't mean that I'm helpless. It doesn't mean I should have a perception of inescapability. It means I need to start putting down on paper what's being done to me. You need it for HR, you need it for a lawsuit, and you also need it for your own sanity so that you can look at the piece of paper and say, that's not me. And then there's other really key techniques that people can do. I'll just give you one more. There's a whole ton.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just give you one more, though, that's a good one to do. So if your sympathetic nervous system is getting unconsciously activated, it's releasing cortisol, it's releasing adrenaline through your brain and body. It damages blood vessels. It leads to chronic illness of all different kinds, so autoimmune, cancer, diabetes, arthritis. Like, it's so unhealthy. I can't stress it enough. No pun intended. But so this sympathetic nervous system is designed to protect you. It puts you into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode so that you can survive. And all of this is happening very rapidly and it's happening repeatedly. So your goal is to take back control. The way you do that, this is people all know mindfulness. We've known for 3,000 years in Eastern philosophy and religion and practice. Mindfulness is one of the healthiest things you can do. In this context, you'll see instantly why that's the case. If you can go inward and do deep breathing, then your body is communicating, your mind is communicating to your brain that you're safe. The guy might be ranting and raving outside the door. They might be humiliating you. They might be doing whatever they're doing, cutting you off from your colleagues. Doesn't matter. You can control your brain, body, and mind by doing the slow breathing, focus on the present, eliminate with gentle kindness anxiety and memories that are negative. Just move it all away. Be present, be focused, feel compassion for yourself and others, and you can activate very consciously your parasympathetic system. It's like a seesaw. Here's the stress response. Here's the parasympathetic stress response. And that's where the deep breathing makes your brain know you're safe. The scientists call it rest and digest. It's one of the healthiest states you can be in. So that would be an example of the unconscious, unintentional, getting pulled into somebody else's psychopathic behaviors or threatened behaviors. You don't have to do that. You can draw up a full-on mental barrier, put yourself into a safe place, and then get your parasympathetic system activated.
Why is it that so many people don't make the connection between our mind and our body? Meaning the manifestation of what's happening in our minds is literally affecting our body. And I will tell you, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018, no family history whatsoever. And I tell everybody to this day, I'm like, I know they caused me cancer. When I told my doctors that, they were like, oh no, it's something else. I'm like, we don't have a family history, but I know the stressors that I had been living under for 15 years. And then it began to be, kind of ratcheted up, if you will, in the last 2 to 3 years before I was diagnosed. I know that my body was reacting to that. And yet you kind of affirmed that as well. Why is it that doctors, the medical industry and division, why people don't believe that there's that connection, but yet it's part of our bodies?
Yeah, that is such a professional big question for the medical
Yeah.
practitioners themselves. My guess is from reading all the material, and let me just say, the central chapter of The Bullied Brain is in fact about how psychological abuse and cancer are correlated, and it can be seen in research. There's extensive
Wow.
research. So,
Okay.
but I mean, for a doctor, their job is not to do that. Their job, they can't control the psychological stressors that you're under. They know for a fact that
Mhm.
there isn't, they know all the research on stress and illness. But at the same time, their job is to go in there, it's to take a look at lab results, it's
Yeah.
to diagnose, it's to get you the right surgery or medication. They have to stay in that focus in
Mhm.
order to be the best doctor for you. If they started to open it up to what exactly is happening to you in your life, you can well imagine they could never get anything done. That
Yeah.
would be my guess. I would love to know what
Mhm.
a doctor
Yeah.
say if we asked them that question. But so it's really an interesting question for me because my PhD is in comparative literature. And so
Mhm.
when you study comparative literature, what you're trained to do is the opposite of a doctor. You are
Yeah.
trained to take expertise out of its silos and
Mhm.
put it into the arena together and see how the conversation changes. So
Mhm.
you and I, Andrea, can have this conversation because what I did in my work was I took neuroscience out of its
Mhm.
silo. I took bullying research out of its silo and
Yeah.
abuse and harassment, and I put them into the arena. And when I did that, I all of a sudden saw a radical change in the conversation. And I mean, the science, as you know, is not reaching the people. We
Yeah.
at work, we in schools, we at university, we and in our professional capacity in our families, we're not being taught what's going on with our brains. We live in a society that ignores the brain. That's why I called my book The Bullied Brain, because the worst kind of bullying that you can do from a brain point of view is act like the person doesn't matter. They have no value and they don't exist. So we do that to our own brains. We bully our own brains. The bullied brain.
Ooh. Ooh. I'm having a moment here because literally, when I say you affirmed everything that I'm sure you have heard other people tell you, say, that's exactly what was going on. I distinctly remember the night like it was last night when I told my husband, I said, something's going on and I don't know what. I said, but I don't know if I'm going to make it. And there was this visceral reaction that I had in that moment where I literally felt like, and the only way I could explain it was that my soul was dying. And I had never experienced it before. It was worse than going through chemotherapy and radiation and immunotherapy treatments for 3 years. It was the worst pain I have ever felt in my entire life. And when I say that to people, they don't get it. Maybe because they don't, maybe they didn't have a severe case as I did. But that's the only way I can explain it was that my soul was dying and that the idea of suicide felt like sometimes perhaps the better option. And that has never been in my psyche, never been in my growing up or my family. We've never had that experience whatsoever. And it was always foreign to me, but yet in that moment, it felt like it was an option. And that scared me.
Well, I that is just it's heartbreaking to hear that, but in my line of work, none of that surprises me. I come across that all the time. So I have a new book coming out called The Gaslit Brain, and it's
Ooh,
about how we get manipulated by the lies of bullying
yeah.
and the lies of gaslighting and the lies, the most painful lies. And I think, Andrea, this might be what you're describing, which are the lies of institutional complicity. Because we belong to a work environment. We have colleagues that we care about. We have higher ups that we admire and respect and we trust. We have this whole rich community that's our professional identity and it's where our heart and our soul is. That's what
Mhm.
we bring to work every day. And that's when you work hard and you care, that's who it's
Yes.
your other family in a way. And so when all of a sudden you do nothing wrong and all the lies of bullying are always the same. It doesn't matter if it's misogyny or homophobia or racism, or they're always the same. The lies are there is a group, a target group or an individual. They are not worthy and they don't belong. That's all bullying hinges on those two lies, and they're lies, they're falsehoods. But it's amazing how entire societies and nations and history has shown us in grotesque ways that people can
Mhm.
be manipulated to believe these lies. They can believe there's an enemy out there, and all their problems will be solved if the enemy is not treated fairly and not given civil rights and is eliminated in some way. I mean, we see that right now, right here in
We
the
do.
21st century. It's terrifying. And
It's terrifying.
people people, and this is what the gaslit brain is about. I'm looking at all the brain mechanisms that teach us that our brains are susceptible to lies. We
Mhm.
are very easily manipulated. Our brain does not, it's not that good at being clear on what's false and what's true. And I mean, we're living through the war on truth right now. It's like, I feel like saying all the time, guys, the truth is the only thing that stands between you and insanity. It is
Yeah.
the only barrier. And if you can't figure out what's true and you don't know what's real and authentic and you believe people who are conning you, you are in very serious trouble in the insanity department. Anyway, I want to go back to this cancer business because
Yeah.
the central chapter and the central core part of my book is about it's a detailed examination of what a student wrote me. And the student was being groomed for a sexual relationship by an educator. And ultimately, which is very unusual in her teens, so at 17, reported this. And she reported it to me. And so then I had legal duty to go through all the different processes. And what I watched was institutional complicity that essentially pushed her right over the edge. I mean, she was very young, and I did everything in my power to try and get her to see she was being manipulated. But anyways, she ultimately took her life. And
Oh.
yeah, at 19. And what was
Mm.
she's one of the brightest girls I've ever taught. I've taught hundreds, thousands of students over 20 years, but she is a bright light, very, very, very articulate, very smart. And what she said is the agonized depression that she felt like cancer. And
Mm.
she said, what people don't understand is that deep down inside, we want to live, but we
Yeah.
can't fight the disease. And I mean, she was thinking in her own mind that she was
Wow.
talking metaphorical cancer, but I'm at the same time as I discuss that, I show the research that it's not a metaphor. You
No.
can get cancerous reactions in your brain and body and mind to abusive behaviors.